תורת הכל, מאת דוקטור אלון גלעדי. מאמר שמיני, החלפת משמרות.
It's time to replace the two pillars of errors. Therefore, even if we choose to follow Kuhn, although I have reservations about his approach, and certainly if we follow Popper, the conclusion is clear. The two foundational pillars of modern science, Einstein's theory of relativity, special and general, and quantum mechanics on the assumptions of uncertainty, chance, and the ad hoc multiplicity of particles, and more, can no longer be held as foundational theories. This is not a matter of needing internal correction or point adjustments, but of the need for a complete replacement of the two pillars themselves. To move towards a theory of everything, we must return to the basics. The laws of nature exist, are muscular and universal. Causal logic remains the same. There is no particle without a field, and no field without a particle. Time is not an independent entity, and therefore does not change and is not relative, and neither is space. From these foundations, it follows directly that the speed of light is not a supreme speed in principle. The claim regarding the limit to the speed of light exists solely to uphold the theory of relativity. Since the special and general theories of relativity do not hold, the limit to the speed of light also falls with them. The speed of light, as Maxwell shows, is a derivative result of the electric field, and the magnetic field of the electromagnetic field, that is, of the product of their potentials, and not an ontological limit of reality. But we know that beyond the electromagnetic force, that beyond the electromagnetic field, there is another force, which is stronger than the electromagnetic force, even according to scientific convention, immeasurably. As we recall, according to scientific convention, there are three additional forces: the nuclear force, which is incomparably stronger than the electromagnetic force, the weak nuclear force, and gravity, or according to Einstein, the curvature of space-time. As we will see later, this entire division into forces is also fundamentally incorrect, and is directly related to errors in observing the highest speeds in the universe. So let's look at the beginning. According to Occam's razor, a simpler, more consistent theory, one that is consistent with observations in both subatomic and cosmic reality, should be preferred over a complex theory that is inconsistent with neither. The theory of relativity does not operate in either small or large space. Quantum mechanics does not operate beyond the dimension of tiny particles. Instead of adding more and more unobserved entities, dark matter, temporary particles, mathematical constants, an alternative, simpler, and of course, falsifiable, fundamental theory should be established. From the principles presented, an unambiguous conclusion emerges. The universe cannot begin with a force or fields, with one force that splits into several forces and from which particles are created. The formula E equals mc squared is not a fundamental formula of reality. Energy does not give rise to mass. Mass stores energy, but energy does not create mass. A field does not give rise to matter, and no matter is created out of nothing. Instead of the conventional picture of a multitude of fields, forces, and particles, a completely different picture is proposed here. The Big Bang gives rise to only one fundamental particle with mass, which includes within it one force field. This particle will be called by Dr. Alon Giladi the adatron. The name adatron was chosen from a combination of meanings, of knowledge, of the purpose of knowing, of pure reason, or in Hebrew, of the adda, of pure rational faith, adhe, for those who believe, and beyond that, because there is a personal aspect here, because the name of Dr. Alon Giladi's wonderful mother was Ada. The adatron is the fundamental particle, the source of the fundamental particles, forces, and fields that shape the entire universe from its beginning until now. If we examine the conventional division of the stages of the Big Bang, according to Planck, a division that also requires re-examination, starting from densities of 10 to the power of 96 to densities of lower orders of magnitude, where by convention the forces appear and the central force splits into the strong nuclear force, the electromagnetic force, the weak nuclear force, and then gravity. Then, according to the view proposed here, this is an incorrect description of reality. In the physical reality described here, the elementary particle, which are identical to each other, are what sustain the foundation of the universe derived from the Big Bang. They are the ones that sustain the central point that remained after the Big Bang at the center of the universe, and they are the ones that sustain that part that separated from the central point, and which, as soon as the density allowed it, disintegrated into the fundamental particles and fundamental forces that subsequently build the universe. As we recall, if we observe experiments that disintegrate the proton, we always see, at the end of the process, a positron. Therefore, the fundamental particle found in the proton is the positron, not the quarks or the gluons. It is the positron and something else. When the adatron disintegrates at the first density that allows this, on the order of 10 to the 38th power, it disintegrates into three fundamental particles: a positron, an electron, and another particle that is the carrier of the central force, which will be called an alphatron. These three particles, alphatron, positron, and electron, constitute the foundation of matter and the forces fields of the universe beyond the central point. The adatron thus breaks down into three particles and only two forces, the only two forces that exist in nature: the central force and the electromagnetic force, not the strong nuclear force, not the weak nuclear force, not gravity, and not the curvature of space-time, but only two fundamental forces, the central force and the electromagnetic force attached to the particle lineage. At the moment of initial separation, therefore, two forces and three particles exist, and this is the entire physical basis of the universe. No additional forces are needed, and no additional particles are needed to explain the structure of reality. In the initial stage, a reality of neutrons is obtained, and then the neutrons decay into protons and electrons in the reality of alphatron, positron, and electron, and from there, according to the current model, which also needs to be tested, into light and the union of elementary atoms and the other atoms to create the universe that is revealed to us at this stage. When we look at quantum mechanics and find uncertainties, coincidences, and observations that cancel out beyond certain ranges, it is not necessary to explain this by means of a collapse of the laws of nature or by means of a non-deterministic reality. Moreover, it is not correct to do so. The explanation here is fundamentally different. Starting from the moment of the Big Bang, beyond the central point, physical reality is built from three particles and only two forces. There is no changing time, no changing space, and the speed of light is not a universal maximum speed. The speed of light is not a physical limit, but a derivative of the electromagnetic field only, and it represents the lowest fast potential among the forces operating in nature. The universe described here consists of three particles that arise from one elementary particle and two forces that arise from one elementary force. Of these two forces, the central force is the stronger, and it embodies the potential for high speeds that are orders of magnitude higher than the speed derived from the electromagnetic potential. What is conventionally called the strong force is nothing more than a particular local case of that central force. When we observe a proton, we see that in every one of its disintegrations, direct or indirect, a positron is ultimately obtained. This implies that the proton is not composed of 3 quarks and gluons, but of a positron and an alphatron. The alphatron has a very tiny mass, close to 0, but not 0, and it creates a central rotation around it. Around it, the positron moves at a density of the order of 10 to the 38th power, that is, at speeds that do not exceed the speed of light by 10 or 100 times, but by millions and even billions of times. The positron, which has a greater mass than the alphatron, possesses a property conventionally called color. In practice, this is a link through the central field, which connects the positron's field to the alphatron's field. In addition, it also contains an electromagnetic field. The electron is located outside this structure in the opposite direction and at different distances with a different force significance. Inside the proton, the positron moves around the alphatron, which moves around itself, all at speeds much higher than the speed of light, and it is this motion that produces the 3 peaks observed in electromagnetic measurements, always a central peak and 2 side peaks. The 3 peaks are not evidence of 3 quarks, but a measurable expression of the rapid cyclic motion of a 2-particle system, a central alphatron and a rotating positron. Electromagnetic measurement does not see the particles themselves because of their enormous speeds, but the average interaction of their fields. It follows that the proton is not a chaotic system of particles moving at speeds close to the speed of light randomly, but a stable, deterministic, rotating structure governed by both the central force and the electromagnetic force. In such a structure, there is no need for quarks, no need for gluons, and no need for additional forces or ad hoc particles. There is one legal, simple structure, and it stands up to both observation and physical logic. 3 peaks, 1 proton. The rise to the peaks of the universe. Here lies the physical element, and here lies the key to understanding the possibility of true interstellar travel. Not a journey to Mars, but a journey from one end of the Milky Way to the other, to Andromeda and back, and to the distant reaches of the universe. The fundamental energy formula, beyond the central point, is
E equals m alpha times c alpha squared plus, parentheses, mp plus me, close parentheses, times cl squared plus 1/2, parentheses, I alpha times omega alpha squared plus m alpha times v alpha squared, close parentheses, plus 1/2, parentheses, mp times vp squared plus ip times omega p squared, close parentheses, plus 1/2, parentheses, me times ve squared plus ie times omega e squared, close parentheses.
the true energy formula is not E equals mc squared, nor E squared equals m squared c to the 4th power plus p squared c squared. It includes the energy contribution of the alphatron, the energy contribution of the positron, and the energy contribution of the electron. We do not currently have the full observational capacity to understand their operation precisely because we have been bound by 2 masters of theories that have failed, and we have not seen what was lying in front of us all along. Now it's time to step outside the box, to the stars outside, through the stars inside, to the stars and back. Atomic energy is actually residual energy resulting from the interaction between the proton, neutron, and electron. It is not the central, powerful, and fundamental energy through which we will reach the stars. This energy lies in the elementary particles themselves and in the relationships between them. However, in order to reach the outer stars and return, the foundations must be corrected, not only in science, but also in morality and faith. As long as humanity continues on the path it is on today, a path of stagnation, coercive rule, and institutionalized subjectivity, it will deteriorate in science, morality, and faith together, and will not reach either the outer stars or the inner stars. Humanity will not be able to exist for long on the path of atomic power, and even less on the path of the central power if it does not change its ways, from the path of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil to the path of the tree of life, to the will to truth. Instead of the will to power, it is appropriate that we now move to the will to truth. The sooner, the better. A will to understand the universe as it is, and to understand what is appropriate in an intelligent, exemplary, and universal way, as the basis for a bright future for all of humanity. There is no field without a particle, and no particle without a field. The speed of light is not the limit, and the universal, causal, and deterministic laws of nature in themselves stand, are strong, and exist. The universe is not an infinitely inflating balloon, but has a central point that I will call the Israeli point, a central point containing most of the mass of the universe, which includes a central force field, the Israeli field, and which rotates around itself in the central Israeli rotation and around which the entire universe rotates. This point is composed of elementary particles that are identical to each other, the adatrons, the central quantity of which remained in the center of the universe and composes it. At the same time, the secondary quantity of the adatrons that separated from the central point disintegrated after the Big Bang, and its products compose the universe through three particles, the alphatron, the positron, and the electron, and two field forces, the strong field force, that is, the residual of the central field force, and the electromagnetic field force, and that's all. To be continued.